everyone, and welcome. We're very excited to have you all join us today. This is going to be a great conversation. There is a lot to cover, and I am joined by this esteemed panel that I am very grateful for them spending the next hour with us as we really kind of dive into what's happening across the healthcare landscape. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Danielle Leach. I'm with More Visibility, joined by my colleague, Christy Nazaro, here as well. Christy will be monitoring the chat for any questions, or if you have any comments or feedback that you'd like to weigh in on with the conversation or from the panelists. Those questions we will certainly try to incorporate throughout the conversation, but we'll try to leave about 5 minutes at the end so that I can pose some of those questions, or Christy can, to our panelists. We are recording this session today, so if you are joining us live, we will be providing, most likely, if not later today, tomorrow, we will be providing you with a link to the recording. I know that we are joined by executives who have all worked or are currently working within the healthcare landscape for hospital systems. But today we were also joined by a number of attendees, although the majority of the attendees here are coming from hospital systems, many that are regional, a few that are national. We also do have a number of organizations hailing from the pharma, life sciences industry, in addition to some of the ancillary and supporting businesses that help a healthcare system operate. But I think overall, the health and wellness space, including life sciences, has a lot of similarities in terms of the challenges that they face, some of the obstacles that they need to overcome, as well as from a marketing perspective, some of the opportunities that exist and or some of the challenges that they face with the marketing opportunities that are out there from a compliance perspective. So I think no matter where you are joining us from today in terms of the slice of the healthcare vertical market, I think that you will find what these three panelists have to offer us in the upcoming hour-long conversation here extremely valuable and actionable. So with that, I'd like to kick off some introductions. And Salima, why don't we get started with you, please?
Great. Thanks so much, Danielle. And thank you to you and the More Visibility team to really have this opportunity today to share. So I'm Salima Khan. I am a senior healthcare marketing and comms consultant, really with a focus on the intersection of healthcare, wellness, and social impact. And really my goal throughout my career, it's been dedicated to healthcare, has been to really inform and educate and empower communities about their health, to really have healthcare communities. We have a lot of work to do, as we all know, in this space, day in, day out, and really the opportunity to be able to continue to elevate health and wellness is something that I really keep a close eye on in all my endeavors. I'd like to think that I specialize in the idea of transforming the marketing communications function. For any of us who have been in this space for any amount of time, we've probably seen more change in our careers over the last 5 to 7 years than throughout our careers. And with that in mind, the idea of really evolving the function to one that is more focused on access, elevating experience, loyalty, enterprise growth, really beyond those traditional norms for healthcare marketing is where I've really spent a lot of time focusing. And really doing that in collaboration with high-performing and passionate teams and partners, which is really how I've come to know Danielle and her team through the years. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation with this panel today and with all of you, and sharing insights on brand leadership and how we can really evolve what we do as we move forward. So thanks so much, Danielle.
I think you were pointing to me, Danielle. I think the audio is cut out a little bit. So hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is James Morgenthau. I run our marketing technology for Virtua Health System in the Northeast. Over the course of my career, I've been in many different industries. In fact, I'm fairly new to healthcare. over the last 5 years, but I have pretty extensive experience over my career, everything from higher education to CPG, pharma, FinServ, and now healthcare. In my role, and traditionally I have bridged the gap between IT in terms of an implementation and the technology stack on the marketing side. I started my career in the IT side of the house, so that has been extremely useful from my perspective to understand both sides of the shop in terms of systems and data and development and what it takes to deploy the solutions, as well as the needs of businesses and executives in terms of executing on visions and using those systems and data. Primarily, I've been focused in performance marketing, so large portfolios of PPC, SEM, as well as on the organic side, SEO and consumer user experience. So I look forward to the conversation. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks, James. I'm Aaron Watkins. I am the AVP of Digital Strategy for North Bay Health System. It's California-based. It's Northern California, a little north of San Francisco, near the Napa Valley. And I was drawn, I actually live on the East Coast, and I was drawn to join the North Bay team because the health system is very purpose-driven now. They're in an exciting era of growth. They're focused on providing urgent care and primary care within 15 minutes of every resident of Solano County, expanding into Napa and Yola counties, and really just expanding the services and the access to what is a really great health system. And, you know, as I've joined this team, it's an entirely new marketing division. I'm really there to rebuild the marketing technology stack. The simple way I describe my role is very similar maybe to how James and Salima might. It's that I am thinking about the consumer experience and that pathway that people take to become, you know, to shift from consumers to patients, and then to have an ongoing relationship with the health system. And so I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Danielle, for the opportunity.
Excellent. Fantastic. And I'm hoping by a show of a thumbs up here, panelists, that you can hear me now. It looks like I did have some audio, so great. Thank you so much. You know, Salima, you mentioned transformation, and that for those that have been in the healthcare vertical, you know, for a while, the past few years has really been fast and furious. And I would say that's only going to exponentially likely go in one direction right now, headed into 2026, as AI is really on the top of all of our minds, and something that we are leaning into heavily as marketers. But in terms of reflection on 2025, it's incredible to imagine that we're, you know, heading into November here. We're well into Q4 right now. But if we think about 2025 and the work that you all have been doing this year, there continues to be a lot of disruption in the marketplace. And certainly the past probably 2 years, many of you, including, you know, the three of you on this panel, have had to deal with privacy challenges, cookies, tracking, data measurement, attribution, right? That was a big, I'd say for the past 24 months, something that almost every marketing department in healthcare, pharma, life sciences has had to really tackle. Some who are still tackling with that. And I would say now, with the evolution and introduction and influence of AI, that's even bringing, you know, different conversation and challenges to marketing departments across the country. And then, of course, we've got tight budgets, we've got access challenges across the different service lines that I believe we all are grappling with. And that has really morphed into, I think, a lot for you all as marketing leaders to be faced and challenged with. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, over the course of 2025, what some of the biggest challenges that you as a marketing leader and or maybe, your organization specifically or your team have been faced with. And I would say, James, I'll kind of toss this over to you to start with, and then of course, Salima and Aaron, please chime in.
The biggest challenges over 2025. Obviously, as you kicked it off, there's the goblin in the room. That AI is coming, right? And the biggest challenge in the wake of that has been sort of the executives and the C-suites, not just acknowledgement of that, but really the question of what to do, right? What to do in light of that, how to bake that into their planning process for how we are going to continue to engage patients and what challenges that creates. Obviously, you've ticked off all the right things, I think, that all of us are experiencing in terms of tight budgets, lean resources, lean staffs in a lot of cases for a lot of organizations. So I think, the biggest challenge has been to sort of disseminate to decision makers and our executives and our partners within organizations what it is that we know, what it is that's coming, what shifts in the marketplace have been happening in terms of consumer engagement. There's going to be a lot of talk about data, and we can kind of, I think, touch on some of that where we're seeing either large gains or large drops depending on your channels. Organic channels, for instance, seeing significant declines across many different industries as we move to a position zero world, right, where AI begins the engagement with our consumers. So I think educating, our leaders, developing a strong plan that involves both the acquisition of tools and data to help us monitor and react to what's happening in the marketplace, but also plan for the next 3 to 5 years in terms of where we see the technology going, and what we can do to continue to show growth in channels that we have, mitigate decline in channels where we're seeing that decline, and prepare ourselves to be competitive within the AI space.
Yeah, all great points, James. Thanks. Salima, how about you? What this year have you really seen, many of your peers and colleagues in the space faced with, and what you yourself are, challenged with in terms of the differences this year as a healthcare marketing leader versus in the past?
Yeah. So, I think that just to look back a few years and really to consider what we all went through going through 2021, 22 during those COVID years, it's hard for us to imagine that I think our jobs and our roles could have become even more complex than they were at that time. And I think that with everything that we have seen, there's no question that has come. And I think it's really worth noting, right? The rate, the intensity, the volume of activity, the complexity of what we're doing has exponentially increased, and that just continues to really boggle my mind, I think, in terms of just how can we keep up with that. And I think that we're all in the mode of upskilling, learning, and growing as much as we can, but there's only so much capacity to do that. So I think that understanding the environment is as dynamic and complex as it is. I think that makes everything that much more complicated. I mentioned in my intro the idea that we are in these roles that for many, many decades were quite set and quite clearly understood as to what we do, why we do it, how we do it. And again, I think anybody who does what we do today understands that has transformed considerably. And so I would say that there are two challenges from my perspective, I think, that continue. I don't know that they're necessarily new. I think that they just continue to increase. So as we think about how we redefining our roles and the value that we bring to organizations is ever more important, and really positioning ourselves as thought leaders and strategists at the C-suite level, as well as throughout the operational operational side of the organization, and certainly the clinical side, really partnering with our colleagues to be able to ensure they understand the capabilities that we have that are so much more vast and complex than they were previously. And I think in terms of the industry itself, I think we're continuing to see this challenge around capacity and access in ways that we had never have just before. When we step back and look at the state of healthcare in the US, we live in a country where we have the most incredible systems of care and delivery of care. However, we are challenged in that we have chronic illness at record rates. We have all of these different challenges that we're facing, and we don't have that systemic fluency, I think, that we really, really need. And so our jobs have now become, I think, as was well stated by my colleague previously, to build that bridge between what the consumer needs and to be able to really ensure that we are delivering everything that we can for those needs. And I'll also just mention, as we consider our audience here, I know that we're quick to jump to what technology seems to be requiring of us, but then there's the reality of multiple generations where you've got everything from your aging seniors, who are obviously our highest dependents on healthcare needs, all the way through to younger Gen Z, now Gen Alpha, and those needs are vastly different. So really trying to understand what those needs are across the spectrum and delivering it to people in the way that they most can understand it and absorb it and appreciate it meeting the need that they have at that time. So, I think just to summarize there, the challenges from an organizational perspective are continuing to transform and evolve what we do, how we do it, and bringing our teams and our colleagues along with us, and then being able to really meet these extraordinary demands that the consumers have of healthcare organizations today.
Yeah, all excellent points. And I love the fact that both you and James have brought up consumerism and consumer. So often when we in healthcare are talking, about who we are trying to reach, it's the patient. And while that in many, many cases is accurate, we all very much need to start thinking about the fact, because of the incredible vast amount of competition that has now entered the market space, it's not a given that just because you are the local, regional, closest provider, that's where the patient is going to go. And so really that branding, that awareness, that engagement, and treating the patient as a consumer or a customer who has choices is a bit of a mind shift, for the healthcare vertical, and something that we all have been, I think, working on and focused on for the past couple of years. So I love that both of you brought that point and illustrated it in some of the, challenges that's who we're working with. We're working with consumers. Aaron, how about you?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it really resonates with me that we are often the voice of the consumers, and that we need to be bringing that to all of our work, constantly speaking to that. I think additionally, we're part of that bridge of saying, all right, these are the consumer expectations. How do we align that with the organizational goals, the business priorities, and how do we kind of keep our eyes on the ball? We all know that the back end of all these systems is incredibly challenging. The effort that we need to put into data alignment on the back end is incredibly challenging. And there can be, I think, in all of our organizations, a desire to kind of look at another technology as the solution. We're all kind of, overwhelmed with these kind of big enterprise solutions right now that kind of claim to do it all and claim to do it all better. At the end of the day, we have to work internally to build the partnerships, keep the eye on the ball, right? And go on what is a really long road and communicate that it's a multi-year journey to do that, and work with our leadership to say, all right, what, these are the business objectives this year. Here's how we can meet them. What does next year look like? What's a 5-year roadmap look like, right? And we've got to do that, or you can easily get caught up in just kind of constantly looking at the next shiny object.
Yeah, and tools are a part of the process. They are not all of the process, as we well know. And I think you make a great point there, Aaron, relative to you just can't keep adding more and more tools to the arsenal. At some point, it becomes completely overwhelming, and you get almost into a analysis paralysis with all of this data and not necessarily anything actionable to take away from it. So
And if I may,
really
I think that there was a point that Aaron made about, the technology being the next shiny object. And I think the other side of the coin is also true, where Aaron, he said that, these tools that are claiming to be all things, right? And that's always omnipresent in the technology space. So I think it's important as well that whether you're talking about CMSs or CRMs or EMRs or whatever they are, we have to keep that in focus as well, that not all tools do all things well, right? And so there has to be a good evaluation in terms of the selection of tools to help us combat these challenges, not just, oh, well, we've got this EMR and they say they can do all of these things, so let's just use that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that actually leads us to a really good